Cyberpunk Uncensored.
And we're live. Welcome, one and all, to Tales from the Forlorn Dopes, hosted by myself, Cybersmily, and
Wisdom. Greetings, programs. It's good to see you again this week.
again, big shout out to Cyberpunk Uncensored for hosting us in this, I believe, episode 12.
Man, we're double digits.
We are double digits. So, before we start getting into the latest topics in the news, so I just pushed out a new update to my character generator, in which you have the capability of purchasing ammos, adding options to your weapons, as well as having kind of a magazine manager. So you would be able to unload with one magazine, switch to a new fresh magazine, and continue on firing. Just to give you
That
some
is good stuff.
a little more crunchness, but with less paperwork.
There's nothing going on the Datafortress2020 side new at this moment. However, our Talsorian just announced that they will not be able to attend Gen Con this year.
Yeah, I saw that.
So anybody who was planning on going just to see them, be warned, will not be there.
Yeah.
Health issues and protecting their staff come first, and I fully support their decision.
Agreed. Especially at Gen Con, which I believe is notorious for the crud. Con crud.
Yeah, I mean, it's got its own disease classifications.
Well, my hope is the RTG crew will be able to get to Total Con, which is right around the corner from me, so to speak. Definitely had great times with them in past years.
It would not surprise me if we see them, well, not me because I can't go anywhere, but if they're seen, if their presence is felt at smaller conventions, especially more local to like the Northern California area. But yeah, I think they'll be coming back strong. I mean, they know what they're doing.
Yep.
Good God.
And I think all of conventions are eventually going to start coming back in full force, hopefully, as people start taking this a little more serious than they have before. But enough of the doom and gloom of reality.
No more doom and gloom.
Let's go to the doom and gloom of cyberpunk. So this session...
Dystopia.
Yes. This session we're going to give our top 3 supplement books that we feel that are a must. So in addition to the base book, what other books we feel are the most important to have.
And we're just going to get it out of the way. Night City is off limits, the Night City source book, because that's number 1 on everybody's list. So other than that, this is going to be an entire episode dedicated to personal opinion.
Correct. So, with Night City, a source book, which, if you don't know what it is a great supplement that really brings Night City alive, with all the different factions. Not so much in the corporate world, but you definitely have the street life brought to...
I mean, what is it? 30 years later, it's still one of the best city supplement guides I've ever seen in role playing. Bard's Gate comes really close. Actually, Bard's Gate. It's we're not going to talk about Bard's Gate. It's beautiful. If you play D&D, you should definitely check it out. But like, it was a super funded, like, humongous budget thing. Night City did not have that back in 1990. It was purely the work of love, and that love shines through. The source book itself is easily available from DriveThruRPG.
You can get a physical copy still from our Talsorian shop.
Yeah, on the Artel Saurian site. The map that comes with the book, I don't think the physical books come with the physical map anymore, but the map is easily available on Artel or on DriveThruRPG as a free, bit of loot. So yeah, it holds up even after all this time.
Yep. So,
and you can't using it in a list of top 3 supplements is like saying, well, what's your favorite movie? Well, Star Wars. Well, no, duh. Everybody's favorite movie is Star Wars. You don't get to count that.
My favorite movie is Big Trouble in Little China.
Well, now, if we're going to get into specifics, I mean,
I know. So,
Blade Runner is where it's at. Excalibur.
Yeah, well, we already did an episode on movies, but
on movies, yeah.
Let's stay focused.
No sense in rehashing. Yeah.
So, source books. After Night City source book, my next one that I would definitely need to have at the table is Wildside.
That's a good one. That was going to be one of my choices.
It is one of the best books because, and I wish our Talsorian back in the day had kept that going. It kind of did for some of the Splat books, but for me, the Fixer, what they did with Street Deal, and the contact system was just fantastic in its approach on how to address a special ability that really kind of was vague in the base book.
It took the weird. You know how I am about abstract rules, especially when it comes to like special abilities. I hate that shit. But it took that weird abstractness and codified it, and made it something like meaty that you could sink your teeth into, and at any level of play. Like there's 3 different levels, but they all work basically the same. 3 different levels in Wildside as to how your contacts work, and it's just beautiful. Like if you're just a casual, like you could apply it to other roles.
Yep.
Like anything that you need contacts for, it's your book. And like you said, man, I wish they'd kept that up, doing source books for each of the roles. I think I mentioned it before that MedTech and Techie, like they need that. Oh my God, do they need that? I'm not enough of I don't have any technical know-how in my head at all, and I don't know anything about medicine. But it has been a lifelong goal, really, to try and get something together to create that missing MedTech Techie source book. It's never come through, and I don't personally feel like I have the knowledge to do that justice. That's more than just like simple research for me.
And I think Cyberpunk Red definitely made techies and medtechs more interesting with their special abilities.
I'll agree with that.
So I wish they had done that, but with a little more, with a Splat book, but it is what it is.
The only complaint I have about Wildside is the layout of it. Like there's a weird dark background on all the pages that kind of makes it hard to read.
Yeah.
And when you're looking for, especially when you're looking for like specific like information, trying to find it on one of those pages, on one of the little sidebars, it's painful, especially if you're looking at the PDF. The PDF is almost unreadable.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, the layout definitely could have been improved. It would have been nice to also have an index because of all the juiciness that was in here.
Yeah. I mean, I remember trying to photocopy the fixer rules for contacts we were just talking about way back in the 90s, just so I could have easy access to them. And like every time I try and photocopy them, the page would just come out almost black.
Yep. And the other thing this book, for me, was the presentation of the amount of roles, or I should say sub-roles, of the fixer. They did have 2 new roles that they added. The only other splat book I saw that kind of had that capability was Live and Direct. They kind of really expanded, your main role into here's what are possible and kind of what the skill package you can have.
Didn't Pac Rim have a bunch of sub roles for everything?
No. They had some roles that were sub roles, but not to the extent that Wildside
Not to
had,
the extent of
or
Wildside,
or Live and Direct.
Wildside, if I recall, they took all the weird stuff from like Punk 21 Interface too, and tried to. Yeah, it was. If you wanted to branch out, it was the book for you.
Yeah. The other thing I really liked was the whole in-depth articles around identity and sin, and basically how is a Black Ops team going to avoid or work in espionage by getting fake sins, by getting fake IDs, forging cred chips, and all that. Having
netrunners
stuff.
Hack the systems, so like your real information no longer exists anywhere.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. It's a fantastic book.
And then
and especially if you play a fixer, it is almost indispensable, because playing a fixer in a regular cyberpunk game is hard. Like it's hard to differentiate between what makes a fixer and what makes a corp a corp. And it makes that job much easier. It gives you so many more ways of looking at the role, other than just, well, he's the guy who makes the deals.
Yep. And then the background and world stuff that it brings, not only for the strip that they kind of flesh out, but also getting into
I love that section.
How to become a global fixer, Yeah. So that's like my number one after Night City source book to have. So what's your number one?
My number one isn't going to come as a surprise to anybody who's ever been to my site. It's Neo Tribes.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, shocking, I know. Nomad Sourcebook, that is my jam right there. I loved everything about the Neo Tribes book. From the art in it is some of the best. I want to say overall the art in Neo Tribes is in the top 3 of all the books that Artile ever put out, including Red. It's all black and white, but it's really gorgeous black and white. Chris Hawkabout did a bunch of it. I don't know. I don't remember the other artists off the top of my head. But yeah, it's just so fantastic. It gave me the foundation. Before Neo Tribes, like, nomads were just this thing that kind of existed in the cyberpunk world for me. And I think that's the way it is for most people who play Cyberpunk 2020 or even Red, is that nomads are just this thing that exists. They're like lesser solos, but Neo Tribes fleshed all that out and made nomads like this super viable, interesting character concept all in and of themselves, beyond more than just Mad Max clones. Like, it stretched it out into like roving. Like it made you look at nomads in a whole new way. Like the agricultural immigration, people who like go and pick fruit and vegetables at farms and stuff like that. People who follow the Grateful Dead around. All these are viable nomads. They live on the road. They move from place to place. And they give you a real taste into what that lifestyle is really all about. And then fleshing out the 7 nomad nations plus the Rap and Shiv. Yeah, that's my. I love that source book so much. Plus, it was written by my friend Ross Wynn, so there we go.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely brought life to the nomad and the complexity of nomads. Because in the book, you're like, okay, what does family mean, really?
Yeah, it doesn't give any. It just, you can call on your family for backup once a month. Well, what does that actually mean? Like,
yep. And what do nomads really do? And I like the expansion of the whole vehicles and really becoming. Yeah. And I'm not sure if they took it from Shadowrun with what they had. And whatnot. Yeah. Just to give.
Vehicle Sense seemed like this new thing to me. I didn't play Shadowrun at the time. Like I bought some of the source books for use with Cyberpunk. Mostly just like the Street Samurai catalog and stuff like that. So I didn't know anything about at the time how Shadowrun broke up their classes. But yeah, Vehicle Zen, man, that spoke to me. That made them unique. That made them, like I said, different and viable with a backstory that nobody else gets.
Yeah, and I think the concept of, a driver was always put on the Nomad prior to this book, but actually showing it and giving that role, the role of, you are the vehicle guy, was,
and
I think, great.
2077, so much of Neo Tribes comes through. Like, I hope they consulted with Ross. He never said anything about them doing that, but like, man, like so much of the way the nomads are portrayed in that game comes straight from that book. It's not even funny, including the family you belong to, the Aldecaldo. That all comes down to that book.
Yep. And the other thing I liked about it was the gear that you got. It was back to basic, simple gear, a variety of vehicles that you definitely want to have for the open road.
Yeah, I mean, it came before Max Metal, but it gave you the vehicle. I don't know, man. You just have to read the book. It's good shit. I mentioned Max Metal. I'm not going to list I'm not going to list the Chromebooks, Black Hand Street Weapons, or Max Metal. None of the gear catalogs, because they're their own thing. They're not really source books. There's splat in them, but for the most part, they're just gear porn. And while I love gear porn, that's a completely separate discussion to what we're having now in my.
All right. So I'm going to take off my Black Hand Street Weapons, which was another essential book in my list. But, yeah, so...
now they're putting out Chromebook 1 through 4 as one book, so...
Oh, really?
I know they were doing it like Chromebook 1, 2, and Chromebook 3, 4.
Yep.
But now I think they're trying to put it out... I was positive I saw something about this on on drive-thru. Just 1, 2, 3, 4.
So my other book that, outside of the gear books, that I would definitely have at my table, and I know it's not not a community favorite, would be Bart Mose's Guide to the Net.
I love that book. I don't know why it's not a community favorite, but...
Well, the whole net running, right? And that whole system has always been kind of frowned upon by the community, but I've always loved the net running rules.
I mean, it was the rules that were frowned upon, and Guide to the Net wasn't about the rules. Guide to the Net's just pure splat. Like
True.
it gives you an actual glimpse as to how the net works, which doesn't. I mean, it doesn't resemble anything like what what we understand the internet to be today. But for something that was written before the internet really took off, like when people were still using not even dial-up, like what was it?
You used dial-up.
Usenet?
Well, there was Usenet, there was dial-up at the time because you had BBSs.
Yeah, BBSs, that's the word I was trying to think of.
The World Wide Web came out, officially came out in the 90s, in 90, and didn't really take off. Well, it didn't really go public
really take off until Windows 95.
Yeah, Windows 95 when
I
that came out.
Yeah, when they actually provided like a browser and all that. Before that, I mean, hell, even Windows 95 was dial-up to like fucking kill the robot.
Yep.
Yeah.
But for me, the guide to the net, going into the net, how it works, how each region kind of is, and giving its own flavor, I really liked. And the other thing that I kind of liked was, and granted it was never really used by any of the referees I've played with, was the micronets, right? And just hacking into someone's cyberware, which, watching Ghost in the Shell and seeing what the general would do, or the major would do, was just,
you're gonna get angry letters about that one. The general, man. I mean, it gave a look to the internet of the cyberpunk world that nothing had before. Before that, everybody was just, we watch Lawnmower Man. I guess that's what it's supposed to look like. And it opened that up. I love the micronets. I'm just a huge fan of lore. Even if it's not lore I use in my games, the more information you can give me about a world, the better I'm going to be able to visualize it myself.
Yep.
And the art is some weird early computer graphics stuff. Back then, it seemed kind of revolutionary and like, wow, that's pretty good stuff. Now you kind of look at it and like, holy shit, what am I looking at? But it holds up.
Yep.
As a glimpse into the past, as a glimpse into the future through the lens of the past, it holds up. Yeah. Is there anything more you want to say about it?
No. I also, the other thing I liked was at the end when they did Bartmoses and Spiders, and just going beyond what was published was interesting. Because I think some people are like, what? You're not staying within the rules. And it's like, well, you kind of are. It's advanced tech, and
saying the rules that rules are meant to be broken.
Yeah, and it's only says that it's max for you.
Yeah, I mean, have you looked at Morgan Blackhand's stats? Yeah. If you have, then Rage Bartmoses should not surprise you in the slightest.
So, what's your second book?
Just to follow up really quick, there was a follow-up to Rage Bartmoses called The Brainware Blowout.
Yep.
And half of the book is a splat book, but the other half of the book gives even more detail to the net, plus it gives alternate rules for running a Netrunner, which solved, for me anyway, a lot of the problems with running a Netrunner. In fact, it back then, it was released at the same time that Wizards of the Coast had acquired the Netrunner trademark and made their Netrunner trading card game. And they gave rules for using that trading card game as the net running rules, which was so beautiful and so elegant. And really, I wish more companies would do stuff like that. Oh my God. The only problem was then you had to track down the cards. You had to invest in a whole new thing, which back then they weren't expensive, but they were collectible. So getting the rare ones was difficult.
Right.
But the beauty of it is you could both play it as a separate game on the side while you're running the actual game, or if it was just something small and simple, you trusted your player, you could have them just sit there and run themselves on their little simple run just to have something to do. It made net running a fun and viable class for a while. The only problem was, at that point, net runners had become such a stigma that nobody wanted to play them, so we used it so infrequently that every time we did, we'd have to relearn the rules.
Yeah, and I've often viewed that book, the Blowout, kind of falls in line with the other Gear books, because the majority of that book was programs and new decks and new equipment for your decks.
You're right. It's more of a splat book than anything else, but
yep.
Therefore, I broke the rules. I apologize. But my actual second favorite book, and this is, I thought long and hard about it, and I'm gonna go with Rough Guide to the Pacific Rim.
Okay.
I love location books. It's a real tie between Home of the Brave and Pacific Rim, and I went with Pacific Rim because in addition to detailing all the Asian countries, everything in the Pacific Rim, including Australia and New Zealand, in addition to giving a brief update as to what is happening in those countries, it also gave us the expanded martial arts rules, and
which some people view as a little OP.
Some people view them as OP. I'm not one of those people, obviously. I had problems with the martial arts. That I fixed even before Interlock Unlimited. Pardon me. Like the system, like the difficulty modifier and like the bonuses the martial art gave you in both the original source book and in Pacific Rim, like they didn't add up. They didn't match. So I redid the martial arts plus added a shitload of them so that they would. I created like an internal formula in my head as to like this many points get you this difficulty modifier. Blah blah blah. But it gave us the format and the table. I mean, if you're going to break down martial arts into attacks and blocks and all that, then it's the one to use. It adds strike and ram. We've talked before about my opinion on weapons and martial arts and like melee, and separating melee and fencing and martial arts and brawl is really kind of weird and redundant. Like I've never understood the theory behind like why melee is separate from fencing. Like, are you telling me that using a sword is so specialized that it takes its own brand of training, but if you just generally train in melee, you can use anything from a baseball bat to a 3-sectional staff with equal ease and brilliance?
Yeah, the other key attack that I think they presented with Pacific Rim that wasn't in the base book was also disarm, which I'm surprised was not in the original book, because my game actually, we ran into that last week where one of the team members was trying to disarm somebody, and I basically only had the base book in front of me, and I tried to look up, okay, what's for that form of martial arts, what's the modifier? And yeah, disarm is not a key ability within martial arts in the base book, which I was very surprised with.
Yeah, it's I mean, a lot of people take a hard line on one style, on one set or the other. Like they'll either like Cyberpunk 2020 rules, nothing, no deviation from that for the martial arts, and other people like myself prefer the expanded pack rim ones. And I think for the most part, it comes down to those differences. Like disarm is important. Like that's a valid skill. The fact that every martial arts school, every dojo, every salon I've ever been into that teaches martial arts, with the exception of some very like basics mall type fucking situations, they're also gonna teach, weapons. I've never been in a kung fu studio that didn't have, weapons training as well. It's never happened for me.
Right.
Sure, there are schools that exclusively teach like fencing. That's true. You can go kendo or kenpo, or you can do classic European fencing. But even still, I mean, unless it's just for like Olympic style bullshit, they're going to teach you basic hand-to-hand combat as well.
Right. The other thing that Pac Rim did, so for those who aren't in the know, there were two additional books, source books, basically alternative universe books, which was Hardwired and When Gravity Fails. Those two books were based off of other novels by their same title.
Yep.
But in those source books that were specifically for those universes, they had introduced a bunch of new roles, and Pac Rim actually kind of legitimized those roles within, I would say, into the Cyberpunk 2020, right? Because
the rules in Hardwired and When Gravity Fails aren't really like, they were written in between 2013 and 2020, and they're not really all that compatible with either. Like, especially when you get into like the weapons and stuff, like the basic mechanics for how stuff works, it stays the same through all the books. But like the weapons in Hardwired are just do crazy amounts of damage. We're talking like 13 die 6 for a rifle and shit.
Yep. And then the cybernetics for When Gravity Fails were a little different as well, because they didn't really have a neuro processor. They had was it the mods?
Yeah, the Moddies and Daddies.
Yeah, Moddies and Daddies.
I mean, it like Effinger had a really cool way of looking at cybernetics and defining cyberpunk for himself. In fact, Effinger, who wrote the novel When Gravity Fails in the whole series, he and the Artel Saurian crew are actually really good friends, from what I understand. Like, especially he and Mike, but which is how they got him to actually write the source book itself.
Yep. And Walt Williams?
Walter Mosley.
Is it Mosley for Hardwire?
It's
thought it was Williams.
It's Williams, you're right.
Yeah.
It's Williams.
He actually did playtesting with I think Cyberpunk 2013 and that source book as well. And of course his source book of Hardwired.
Mike and crew have the credentials with the sci-fi like literary community. Like, you can point to Shadowrun, you can point to even GURPS Cyberpunk, but like Mike and crew were hanging out with the real deal like creators of the genre.
Yep.
So that's a beautiful thing. But yeah, I really like the information put forth in Pac Rim. A lot of people think, a lot of people don't want to agree with the direction they went, and that's cool. I don't agree with everything that, splat-wise that they laid out in Pac Rim.
Yeah.
I don't agree with half of the stuff in Eurosource or even Home of the Brave for that matter. Like some of the places in the United States that they detail, like I'm all like, that's not what I want to happen there. Or if this happens, then that really just kind of throws everything into blah blah. So we're gonna ignore that and go with his other idea. But they lay down the basis for such a great world.
Right. Yeah, so that was your second book. So my third book, and again, running low because there was some other books that we kind of said these are off limits. I would say the next book that I would definitely love to have would be Deep Space. Just because how it was written and how detailed they got into space.
It's
from an environment.
Fucking-tastic.
And the things that can kill you in space are plenty. And then it just going into what life is like there, right? With the various, I would have loved to see more detail into a lot of the space stations. The
High Rider culture itself. I mean, there's just it's such a rich role-playing environment. And it really is it's all you really need to play a good, like, ignoring the faster than light travel of a show like The Expanse. If you want to play a game where, you know, you're playing spacers, this is the supplement for you. If you want to play a game that reminds you of the old Sean Connery movie Outland, or, you know, the original Aliens without the alien, although you always add an alien in on your own. That's your business, not mine, buddy. Like it lays the groundwork to do all that in a fairly realistic and consistent manner. It even lays the basis for, like, world colonization. Like we haven't done it yet so far, although we have put a base on the moon. We've got people traveling to Mars in deep space.
Well, the Mars station is supposed to be operational in 2023, I believe, is when they complete construction there. Which, of course, falls in line with when the fourth corporate war really starts getting crazy.
Me, I could have this wrong, but I want to say Deep Space is the most far-fetched or far in the future of all the Cyberpunk 2020 supplements, in that it takes place, I want to say, in 2025 or 2027.
I think the scenario starts in 2025, or at least they have a history up until 2025.
Yeah.
Which, of course, now is alternative history. And since the corporate war.
I mean, it all depends on whether you corporate war. I don't do it. Sure. It's another. I'm not going on that rant tonight. Yeah, Deep Space is fantastic. That was another one that I debated heavily on whether to include. So I'm glad you did. I love the whole idea of the High Rider culture. I wish they'd given us a better, like, the idea of the Crystal Palace being this resort in space. Like this combination research facility and like 5-star resort, hotel, amusement park, casino, just in geosynchronous orbit, just is awesome to me. There were a couple of times when I was running high-level espionage campaigns where it culminated with a trip to Crystal Palace, which was difficult because they don't give they don't give a whole lot of actual detail on the facility. I love seeing it at the end of the video game. But I found, about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I found an adventure module on Drive-Thru RPG. I cannot for the life of me remember what it was called, but it actually gives like a layout of a tourist ring type satellite that I used as the blueprints for Crystal Palace in my game.
Well, I know someone, I want to say maybe last year or earlier this year, they did a pretty good kind of diagram of Crystal Palace in which they had the tourists. Yeah, they rendered it in 3D. I'm trying to remember what site that was.
Yeah, find that out. I would very much like to see that.
Yeah, they were basically, I believe they might still be trying to create maps for Cyberpunk Red. But yeah, they published that out. Yeah, I have Deep Space open in front of me, and I'm like looking through it, and I'm like, they kind of give a diagram of what Crystal Palace kind of looks like, at least from a side view, and a bit of the top view, but yeah, I would rather see like a isometric. The other cool thing in Deep Space is they also have layouts for various stations, like work shacks and research stations, battle satellites. Yeah. And then looking at these and thinking back to 2077, when if for those who've completed the game, when you're doing the Arasaka endings, just remembering how that layout looked and seeing how these compartments kind of synced into each other kind of gives me an outside look at what these facilities kind of really look like.
For anybody who's interested, the supplement I was talking about was called Argos 3 Deep Spaceport. It basically is just a big satellite station for future Armada, and it was put out by Ryan Wolf. You can probably still find it on Drive-Thru RPG if you're interested in running a space campaign. Just to give proper credit.
WritersCthulhu.com. That's the one who has the map. Let me, I'll post that into chat.
Writers of Cthulhu. Well, I'm going to have to... Yeah, that sounds kick-ass. Oh, look at you with the link right there.
Yeah, I love that.
Oh my god.
Yeah, they have a lot of maps.
Oh, that's getting bookmarked. Oh my god.
Spruce maps for... Yeah, look under their handouts and under handouts and maps, and then just go to Cyberpunk. And you'll see they got quite a few. Ooh, they have a...
Downloading that as we speak.
As a side tangent, I haven't been to their site in a while. I only saw their original 3D map, but they have a SIM card mock-up.
Ooh, really?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Man, I am impressed. You guys are awesome. Well, there you go. Writers of Cthulhu, you got some free press from us.
Yep.
All right. My third book. I would say, just based on how often I reference it, you know, I'm going to go ahead and go with Home of the Brave. I was thinking about a different book, but Home of the Brave, it details America. It shows us what the world beyond Night City looks like it is the perfect supplement. Like it goes hand in hand with Neo Tribes. It details. It doesn't go into a whole lot of detail, but it gives the general state of the U.S. military and its 4 branches in 2020. It's not quite as detailed as Night City, but it's got 50 states that it has to cover, and it covers them all in some manner of detail or another. And if you run any kind of game outside of Night City, it's almost invaluable to you.
Yep.
I mean, that's my 4th pick.
I definitely like some of the flair that they have, the history and why America collapsed, how it collapsed, and just some of the statistics of it all. Some of the
weird things that happen in the timeline that you're all like, well, how did that actually occur? What the hell is a lawyer purge, and how did we let that happen? It gives detail on. And like with all the splat, like some of it you might not agree with, some of it you might not use in your game, but it ties it all together, and it does a really good job of doing so. Yeah, and just how the state of the government really is. I would like to have seen a little more expansion of why corporates, and again, we kind of hand wave it, but give a definite answer of how a megacorp is able to get away with what they get away with, and what is the relationship? That seemed like such science fiction back then. Yeah, and what is the relationship between a corp and a government? Yeah, we kind of can pull real world now on how it kind of works, but to have the corporation take that extra step and become its own nations, right, and its own sovereignty. Really, what is that detail? So if I kill somebody on corporate property, is it, again, is it a state am I going to get tried outside of when I step off of the corporate property? Yeah, and is it a corporate governance that happens? Corporate busts me. Can they actually enforce a law? Can they send me to prison? Blah blah blah. Right. How does that work? What I really liked was that it tried to detail what it actually meant to be a free state in the U.S. in the time of 2020, because that always seemed really confusing. We know that the U.S. military has bases in the free state of Northern California. How does that work? And it goes into that. Basically, what a free state means in 2020 is that they're not paying. They still have to allow military and all that. They still have to follow the federal jurisdictions, but they don't have to pay taxes, and they don't have to pay into the relief fund, like the national disaster and all that, and they don't get to claim it either. Which, predictably, it kind of there's more to it than that, obviously, but predictably, that's why some states who have been pushing for this the longest ended up screwing themselves completely. What happens to Texas is a pretty realistic view of what would actually happen to Texas if they seceded from the U.S. Basically, they fall to shit. All right, so that's our top 3. Now we can start going into honorable mentions. Yeah, I would say we can get into honorable mentions. So I've kind of categorized the books into kind of 4 or 5 different categories, right? I do the same thing. So the one category is gear books, right, which includes the Chrome books, Black Hands, Brain Blowout, Maximum Metal. You have the Splat books, right, which are centered around there's roles. 2 different kinds of Splat books. There are role Splat books like Solo of Fortune, Rocker Boy, Wild Side, and then there are geographical Splat books. Yep. Which Eurosource, Rough Guide. Yeah. Home of the Free. I would even throw in,
the home of the free.
That's where I put
Land of the free, man.
Gravity Fails.
Right. Yeah, and so Hardwire and When Gravity Fails, kind of for me, are kind of supplementary alternative worlds.
Sure.
And then
they actually keep them in the same area that I keep all the Ionis and the other company,
Atlas.
And Atlas games, the third party stuff.
And then you have the scenarios, right, which includes the Firestorm series, Edge Runners, Tales from the Forlorn Hope, Land of the Free, and Euro Tour.
Edge Runners to me falls into the role category because it's really just a big book of NPCs.
Half of it's NPCs, half of it's gigs and scenarios, stream sheets.
Sure.
So that's why I consider it more
either way. Yeah.
More of a scenario versus it's a weird it's a weird blend.
Splat for the sake of splat.
Right.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and then the role books are Live and Direct, Protect and Serve, Solo 1 and 2, and Rocker Boy. I can tell you my least favorite book out of all of the books is probably Rocker Boy. It does give nice background on the entertainment, but I don't know. I just never really... I think because it's so small.
Rocker Boy. But here's the problem. Unlike Near Orbit, which got updated for Deep Space, Rocker Boy never got updated. So it's still this weird 2013 thing with like 2013 art and like a 2013 layout. But I dig it. I like the fact that it's set up like a magazine. It's the same type of thing as Solo of Fortune. I like the alternative looks at what it is to actually be a rocker boy. Beyond just, a Bon Jovi clone on the stage who every now and then screams about something political. Like the tagline, Hitler was a rocker boy, has always, it's always stuck with me in trying to define like what that role is. It's not really a musician or an entertainer so much as it is, a political activist.
Yeah, I think the reason why is it was very lean on adding to the game, right? So it did introduce
that. There wasn't.
It kind of brought brain dance into the system, which was nice, and kind of gave you little bits of gear, but compared to like Solo of Fortune, right? So Solo of Fortune, not only did you have the various equipment, guns, cyberware, you also were given new types of roles that you could apply.
Rules for vehicle combat.
NPCs, so it kind of fleshed out gangers, chromers versus dwarfers versus, all those. What's a Euro solo stats versus a Mossad, and also gear to kind of help a solo along. Whereas Rocker Boy was kind of like, this is what it means to be a rocker boy, and we're not going to give you really any new equipment or what you need in the future to become a good rocker, right? What amp do you need? An amp? Do you not need an amp? Can you
I mean, this is
soundboard?
Sound weird, because I am obviously a proponent of having like 50 different types of gun, of 9mm handgun. I'm all about that. But how many different ways could you write up a guitar without like knowing anything about guitars?
True. But
so I think that's like the gear wise. I don't know. They could have given rules for like how to actually play instruments and like how to run a concert scenario or something like that. I'm with you on that. There was definitely further that they could have taken the book that they just I love fluff, but sometimes you gotta cut back the fluff and include some meat.
Yep.
Meat.
So that's my I will not need at my game table.
It's not my least favorite, but I
Honorable,
can see why it's yours.
yeah. Honorable mention, I think, would be the Solo of Fortunes.
I love the Solo of Fortunes.
Yeah. They were definitely great books. Added to, and again, I think it all depends on your game style. So I've always kind of run Black Octane, kind of street, edge running, samurai type of game. So I don't often get into.
It's easy stuff to add to a campaign. Like, you can look at guns and vehicles and gear like that and just instantly know what to do with it.
Yep. And I like their bit about, what kind of conflicts are in the world.
I like that too.
And the fluff that they brought. I mean, they definitely centered a lot with Russia. I wish they did a little more on like South America and, Africa.
Yeah.
And getting out of...
That's why I took it upon myself to write Conflict Africa and Conflict South America, is because, man, there just was no detail on those places at all, except for these scant references of, we're fighting a war there, but nobody knows what's actually going.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I kind of, I guess will blame our Talsorian is, for me, South America played a very big part in the history of cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Because of the South Am Wars.
I mean, the Long Walk itself was just such a cool fucking concept that I feel like... I mean, I fleshed it out a little bit more personally with my site, but man, I really wanted to see more official material about it.
Yep.
And we got really nothing about South America at all. Like, when I was researching meticulously through the books, like, it was just like mouse crumbs of information on South America and what it had been, like what had happened to it and what was going on there now. Like, it was difficult finding that information, but overall, I mean, the Solo of Fortune books were much better than mere like gun porn splat.
Yep.
I liked the section detailing the different kinds of solos, like the difference between like a Euro solo and like a mercenary, or like a bodyguard and like a corporate assassin. Like, these guys operate in vastly different manners, and it's important to kind of get a grasp of that.
And also with Solo 2, the introduction of like Borg weapons.
Yeah.
Granted, Solo 1 and the base book didn't really have the concept of a full Borg at that time.
But they still gave us some big ass guns.
Yep. I would say the next kind of splat book I would definitely want to have on my available, right? Quickly available is probably Protect and Serve.
That was going to be my honorable mention right there.
Yeah.
Protect and Serve. I have referenced that book so many damn times. I don't agree with a lot of what's in it. I think the idea of just regular patrol cars being armed is kind of weird and silly to me. I get that that's the feeling that they were going for, but that's not the feeling I wanted in my personal games. Like, if RoboCop's car doesn't have a minigun attached to it, then I don't see why Officer Schmucks would. But as a whole, detailing like how a police station works, how the different divisions inside a police force like work and communicate with each other. It was the first role-playing supplement that I ever saw that went into detail about any of that. At some point later, GURPS released their own cop source book. But man, I have referenced Protect and Serve so many times, and it's just a great book.
Yep.
However, at the same time, and I apologize, this is going to sound really harsh, but of all the official cyberpunk books, it has the worst art. Like, just it doesn't. It's not that the art is necessarily bad; it just does not fit with the rest of the books. It's very simple, very crude lines.
It's hit or miss. There's,
it just
some pieces are good, some pieces are like, ew. Because as we talk, I have all the books like opened off to the side in PDF format, but like, yeah, there's definitely.
Obviously, I love the concept of running cops in cyberpunk. After Nomads, it is the probably the area I've got the second most experience running as a GM. Either as cops or as detectives, because just private eyes. Like one of my first articles and one of my most frequently updated articles for Data Fortress is obviously my NCPD. And I try and have the books have that operate in concert with the books. Obviously, I've gone in some different directions on stuff, but as a whole, I like to think they're fairly compatible.
Yeah. The other thing I liked about Protect and Serve was that they statted out pretty much a lot of NPCs that, as a edge runner, you would run into, whether it's a corporate hitter, a beat cop,
They had an entire section of like just story ideas.
Yep.
And it's all brilliant stuff. Like none of it was bad. Even some of the more goofy stuff was still completely viable in your standard cyberpunk game. I recommend it. It could have used an update too. I wouldn't have minded seeing an update to Protect and Serve, if anything, just to update the art.
Well, one of the art pieces in the book actually gave me my handle.
Really?
Yeah, on page 19 in the background with some of the graffiti.
Let me look that up here really quick, because now you got me curious.
Granted, I misspelled on purpose.
I always knew your name sounded familiar, but
and like page 19, that artwork is decent. It's not the best artwork in the books.
Cover. The cover's fantastic. Bill Aiken did the cover.
But yeah, there are certain pieces of art in this book that... Ugh.
Like not all the art is bad. Like some of the art is very good. Like all the stuff at the start. I liked the story, the fiction they wrote. I love it when Artel does that. I wish they'd credit the pieces with the artist's name so I knew who was doing what. 19, you said.
Page 19, yeah.
Blah, blah. Yeah, I love that piece of artwork right there. That is fantastic. That is perfect cyberpunk cop shit right there. You are right. And the follow-up on page 20 is pretty good. It's not, I guess it's not until we get to like the gear section that the art starts turning.
Yeah.
Hell, the MaxTac cop that it shows on page 26 is utterly fantastic. Like, he reminds me of the big macho cop from Dominion Tank Police. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I always thought the dude was hilarious. Yeah, no, I was wrong. I was mistaken. The art doesn't start getting weird
Until the
lackluster
scenarios have a couple bad ones, and right before it gets into the scenarios.
Yeah, once you get to like page 43, the art starts looking really it doesn't hold up to the rest of the stuff that's going on.
Well, artist might have been on a timetable and was like, okay, I'm going to crack these out. They're not going to be the best work I've ever done, but...
The guns look so goofy. Like, I know that's a weird thing to complain about, but they just...
Yeah.
They're goofy looking. Like, the magazines for the guns, like, expand from, like, a small part where, it fits into the magazine well... the base of the magazine, which is like twice as big on all these. They look like 50s ray guns.
Yeah. Yeah, like I would say the art from... You definitely see a good piece of art on 50 through the following pages on like gun barrels. I don't know
if... It changes radically.
I don't know if it was supposed to be a... silencer or they're trying to make a futuristic gun, but yeah, they look like they're ray guns drawn from an earlier era.
Like the first half of the book, the art's really good. The second half of the book, it's just not. It reminds me of like just the style itself, not the actual images, but it reminds me of like the kind of thing you'd see in the back of comic books advertising stuff. Like just the really poorly drawn illustrations that were advertising like weight loss supplements and sporting equipment and shit like that. Back in the 80s and 70s and 80s.
Yep. So
I hate to be talking shit about any artist because God knows they're better than I am, but just as a consistency thing, the change is jarring.
So, I guess got a few more minutes. Since we kind of classified some of these books, so from a gear point of view, what gear book do you have to have at your table?
All of them. Wow. I gotta have all those gear books.
No, you only get one.
Only get one.
Yep.
Only get one. If I can only have one, can I cheat? And use one of the combined books?
No. Either use Chrome 1, Chrome 2, Chrome 3, Chrome 4.
It's not fair.
You could use Black Hands. I'll give you that. The brain
Black
blowout
Hands would not be one of the books. It just would not.
And then Max Metal.
Oh man, it is such a toss up between Chrome 2 and Max Metal that.
Yeah. I can tell you right now, Chrome 2 for me.
I think in the end I'd have to pick Chrome 2.
Yeah, because to me, Chrome 2, Chrome 1, awesome art in. 3 and 4 definitely had great art in. Chrome 2, not great art, but awesome content.
I love the art in Chrome 2. I prefer the art in Chrome 2 to the art in Chrome 1 for the most part. And that's not to say I don't love the art in Chrome 1. I obviously do. I fucking love that art. Hell, that art is one of the reasons I got into the game so hard. Is because the first guys I played with had the source book and they had Chrome. and like the look of Chrome just sucked me in. Like, this is just like Bubblegum Crisis. Holy shit, I'm into this. I'm in. You've sold me. But Chrome 2, expanded cybernetics. I mean, I hate to sound like that guy, but it gave us rules for full conversion, so we could play Ghost in the Shell, or we could be Bateau, or we could be RoboCop. And it did it on a scale. Like, you could either be the super military, like, fucking death machine, or you can just be like, you know, humanoid, like Motoko Kusanagi with the Gemini.
And I think the other thing that, or I don't think, I know, the other thing that Chrome 2 brought was a real diversity of gear, right? So it not only brought in electronics, weapons, but it also got into cyber decks. It got into the rocker boy stuff, right? So there was gear for the rockers. To me, it had gear for everyone.
It was the best of the Chromebooks, and as such, that means it's the best of the Splat books. Max Metal, it comes in so close, they're almost tied, though, because it gives us everything we need to not only run military vehicles, but create our own vehicles. Plus, it gave us power armor, which I'm a fan of Bubblegum Crisis. I'm a fan of Appleseed. I love the idea of powered armor.
I love the
I created my own powered armor in Cyberpunk 2020. Like, in that very first 6 months of playing, I was like, holy shit, basically it was just Metal Gear that somehow magically gave you like small bonuses to your stats.
Yeah, with Max Metal, I just never, I mean, I like that you could design your own vehicles, but I've never really had to use it within a game. And power armor, I love the power armor, but I've never really used it in a game.
I can say after 30 years of running the game, there was only ever really a couple of campaigns where powered armor was something that, like a couple of military campaigns, a couple of cop campaigns, and one espionage campaign. And even when the players had access to it, it didn't get used very much because it's kind of a pain in the ass to use. It kind of has to be very mission specific. You can't just walk around in powered armor.
Yep.
But the vehicle creation rules and the enhanced vehicle combat rules, that's great stuff. And when they updated it with the Firestorm books, that alone made the Firestorm books worth owning.
Right. Yeah, the other reason why I love Chrome 2 is because it gave, to me, the best weapon in the game made an appearance there, and that's the Volt pistol.
Everybody's got their favorite weird, quirky little weapon.
If you don't know what the Volt pistol is, look it up. It is, to me,
it's fun.
The best gun. Bypasses armor, does half real, half stun, which is fine, but it also can basically short out all your cyberware if you're not grounded.
As a player, every one of my characters that I've ever created has been so radically different that almost none of their gear is the same. So I can't pick a consistently favorite weapon. But if we're gonna go with favorite quirky weapons, my favorites are the Bioascari motion restraints. I freaking love those things.
Really?
They're like blue balls. Yeah, dude, they're so versatile. Basically, they just like super hyper expanding balls of goo that like entomb the person you're hitting. It's like hitting them with the. I always envisioned it as after it explodes and instantly hardens, that it looks like the resin stuff from Alien and Aliens that had the people all like locked up on the wall and shit. That's how I always envisioned it. My favorite trick with the motion restraints. My favorite trick in the book is anytime my character who used it was getting attacked by people on motorcycles, he would huck one of those things at their wheels.
Nice.
So not only would it explode and at the same time like stick them to the bike, but it also would freeze up that front wheel so they'd go flying head over heels, and every time they hit the ground they'd have the bike on top of it. It was awesome.
Yeah, so I think we covered quite a few of the books. So the ones that I don't think we really got into were scenario books.
No, it's hard to judge those objectively. I mean, I don't tend to use a lot of pre-made adventures when I run games. I mean, I've run Land of the Free a couple of times just because it's such a brilliantly written and executed like mega campaign that I like. Anytime I get a really good group going together, eventually I'll try and run them on that just so they can experience it.
Right.
Obviously, I love Tales from the Forlorn Hope. I treat that more as like a setting supplement than an actual scenario book. Even though the scenarios in it are good and they reference all my favorite things. Hell, there's an entire scenario in that book that basically is a ripoff of the Dirty Pair. No, they're all ripoff. They're all homages to something.
Yep.
But
yeah, for me,
yeah.
The main books I've always used are like the Firestorm, because of the timetables. Oftentimes, it's kind of either Firestorm is happening in the background for the players, so there's always that intrusion of what's going on with that whole debacle of the Fourth Corporate War. Or I've run games in which the players have been part of the teams, and whether it's Militech or Arasaka, and fighting the corporate war and doing those type of missions. So for me, out of all of them, I would say Firestorm is probably my go-to for scenarios because it gives enough background to having something in the background that's happening that gives the world a little more, yeah, I know what you're doing in this little part of the world, but there are bigger things going on that kind of are happening that you are not aware, well, you are slowly becoming aware of, and things trickle down because of that towards you, whether it's scarcity of weapons, scarcity of resources, etc., as that war heats up.
Yeah, I mean, you know me. I ignored the events of the Firestorm books. I treat them more like gear books than anything else. So the adventure, I've used some of the plot points from it, especially from the first book. The whole I liked the idea of the characters getting caught in this corporate submarine conflict. It was very low key. But it didn't, in my game, it never escalated into the Fourth Corporate War. It was just standard corporate bullshit.
All right. What about the corporate books? You got any favorites out of those three?
I mean, I love that they gave us detail into the books or into the corporations. Some of the corporation choices they picked, which I didn't understand really. Just because they didn't at the time I was reading, they didn't really seem all that interesting to me.
Petch-
And now looking back, they're pretty cool. They're all good, but it was definitely the detailings of Arasaka and Militech that got the most attention from me.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, for me, the two, yeah. So whether it's the Arasaka and IEC, again, kind of IEC was introduced with that corporate book. I mean, I would have liked to have seen either EBM or yeah, one of the other ones that were listed in the main book.
I would have liked to have seen some detail into one of the major cybernetics corporations.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to see in one of those books.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to see Biotechnica or Raven Microset.
Yeah, as opposed to IEC or
The Petrochem versus Soviet Union
Petrochem,
or Soviet Oil, which was kind of nice. It showed you two megacorps that have the same genre or the same portfolio and how they're warring against each other.
Way, then Arasaka and Militech should have been the same book.
Yep, I agree. And then do like Biotechnica versus one of the other BioWare or cybernetic corporations.
Or Raven versus Kuroshi.
Yep. So outside of our Talsorian books, so there was two companies, for those who aren't in the know, that gained licenses from our Talsorian to write supplements for Cyberpunk 2020. One of them was Ionis, who later became GPod 9. That company produced a alternative world in which they introduced kind of horror elements and supernatural elements into their world. So those books were kind of geared towards more paranormal cyberpunk than true cyberpunk. And then you had Atlas Games that didn't write any source books. They just wrote scenarios.
But their scenarios damn good.
Yeah, I agree. So if you're looking for good scenarios, definitely check out Atlas. I believe they have some of them out on Roll or Drive-Thru RPG. Some of them they didn't republish.
The highlights of Atlas's product line, I think, were Northwest Passage was really good. Cabin Fever was fantastic. Like, Cabin Fever is one of those perfect starting games. Like I said, I don't run a lot of pre-made adventures, but the scenario laid out for Cabin Fever it's the tits.
Yeah, the first and scenario I bought from there was Green Wars, which was basically a adventure to do a hostile takeover of a corporation, which I kind of liked. I ran it twice. Of course, the party eventually dissolved before we could actually finish the game.
I'll tell you what I remember about Green War. Its cover and some of the interior art was done by a guy named C. Brent Ferguson, who did a comic book at the time, and it freaked. It was really weird because I recognized his art immediately, and nobody else has ever heard of him. What was the name of the comic he did? It was a very cyberpunk comic. That's gonna eat at me. Go ahead. I'll figure it out, and then I'll interject out of nowhere with it.
Yeah, so Green War was, to give some people background, basically it was a scenario in which a corporate is trying to take over a corporation through stock manipulation and buying of stock. So the party is kind of given, I wouldn't say carte blanche on what they can do, but they're given a hefty bankroll to get it done, right? So they have the ability to use that money to buy stocks for that corporation, and also pay for various assets that might need to be done, such as running black ops or doing some other nefarious things to kind of take over that corporation. It kind of spelled out how to do a corporate takeover, but from a street level.
Yeah.
Which, a megacorp you definitely wouldn't be able to do. Which I thought I liked because, as I mentioned in a previous episode, there was a HBO movie that kind of played into that whole type of corporate battles, which was it was one that was Barbarians at the Gate, and then the second one was Weapons of Mass Distraction. I don't think you're going to be anyone's ever going to see those, but I always like that corporate politics and espionage of cyberpunk, and tried to always put that into my games.
It's weird that it's such an important aspect of cyberpunk, but it's so underrepresented. They're always corporates are always treated as second level or even tertiary characters. It's very, very rare that you get a first-hand glimpse at what a corporate is and what they do. The best example, of course, is that show Incorporated that only got one season. It was so good.
It was good.
But it's so, you get glimpses of it in other stuff, but it's so very rare that corporates get the respect and love that they deserve as far as representation in the genre.
Yeah, and I also think it's hard for a referee to play into that at times, right? Because
really.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's one of those roles that the corporate that the game. If you're going to play that role in the game, then a lot of the game has to revolve around that. And there's no problem. That's not a problem. There are lots of character concepts that the game only works, even if everybody else is playing other stuff and they're getting equal representation in the game. The game still kind of has to revolve around that. It's like if you look at a show like Firefly, or if you look at a show like Firefly, the game really is based around them being nomads, for lack of a better term. They're always on the run, they're always on the move, taking weird jobs, smuggling and shit like that. There are a ton of archetypes who make up the cast, but the show itself revolves around, them being nomads to some extent or another. And it's like that with corporates. If one of the characters is going to play a corporate, it almost not always, but almost always necessitates a strong corporate influence on the game itself.
Yep. And play...
Or they're just... Go ahead.
And to play a corporate right, at least from a referee point of view, is... So the corporate world is very E or B, and I don't think a lot of referees always take that into account, that there is someone always gunning for that position, right? If you're not doing your job right, or you're slacking, you are going to get replaced. And
Terminal Drift. Sorry, yeah. I told you it was going to come in out of nowhere.
That was the comic?
That was the comic, Terminal Drift.
There was a book I actually read, which was Market Forces, which really got into taking what the corporate world is now and taking it one step further, and you need to kill people to get promotions. And I can definitely see that in a Cyberpunk 2020 world, in which there are people always gunning for you as a corporate, especially if you're employed, because they will always want to take you down and take your position and work outside.
That sounds good. I need to read that.
Market Forces, I believe it's called. I think that's the name.
Adding that to the list of stuff to check out.
But yeah, so again, I think the corporate books kind of flesh out a corporation in that way, which was always nice. And again, Green Wars is not available on Drive-Thru RPG as far as I know. So no.
Oh, that's sad.
It is a rare book.
It's on eBay. I saw it earlier today when I was looking for stuff on eBay.
Was it like $40 or $50?
Oh, I don't remember. I didn't pay attention to the price. I was just like, what's available for Cyberpunk 2020? What's available for Cyberpunk Red? Blah, blah. I just every now and then do these searches just so I can see if there's something groovy that I missed or whatever. Yep. Here's a copy of the 2020 box set that was going for like $200. I thought that was a pretty good deal. I don't have the money for that, but it's a pretty good deal if you don't have it. And I think I saw somebody selling a whole set of Interface magazine.
Yeah, I'm just missing two of them.
I didn't pay attention to the price.
God damn, stop. Let's do that off air, because I will definitely be looking at that. But anyways,
you don't want nobody beating you to that punch.
Yeah,
I get you.
So for Atlas, I think they definitely have great scenarios. Even picking up one.
Atlas, they also had Night City Stories, which that's a winner. That's a winner of, even if you don't use pre-made scenarios, just the idea, the plot concepts are enough to crib from.
The one thing I liked about Night City Stories was the handouts that they gave you around those NPCs, right? Yeah. So not only did you get the profile of the NPCs, but they gave you like the retina scan of them, their thumbprint.
They were really good about it, like goodies too. Like at the back of the book, like, here, scan off this Mega Xerox this business card and hand it to your players and stuff like that. I love when games do that. I love goodies. Having something in your hand always gives you like, it brings you into the game. It's Home of the Brave had like a box full of just business cards and like fake credit cards and like travel plane or blimp tickets and stuff like that you could hold it in your hand and be all like, oh yeah, I get you. Put this in my character sheet. Souvenir for later.
Yep. As for Ionis products, they're definitely geared towards their scenarios are geared towards their universe. The one thing I really liked from them was Dark Metropolis. I forget if it's Dark Metropolis or Grimm's Cyber Tale. Both of them are actually good.
Metropolis is really good stuff. It was really light on the supernatural aspect, while at the same time being heavy on like the psychological horror, like their drug addiction tables and their insanity tables. They were next level. A lot of people prefer them to your basic cyber psychosis rules.
Yep.
I liked their effects on weather and on your sanity and on your physical health. Like heat waves just fuck you up. Because really, they do.
Yep. And their expansion of the drug rules, I liked. It kind of made them a little more realistic compared to 2020. But yeah, so if you like crunch, you definitely want to pick up those books, because the expansion that they did with because they broke up cyberpsychosis into, I think, 4 or 5 different categories, whether it's dissociation, paranoia, delusions, and I forget what the other category
Psychosis.
is. Yeah, and they kind of like took
And,
cyberware and
the other one was depression, but I could be wrong.
yeah, and then they took the cyberware, and depending upon the type of cyberware would affect you in whatever category, and then kind of listed out, okay, you're at this level, this is how you behave. You're at this level, this is, as you go deeper and darker, it kind of goes deeper and darker.
You hit a point, and then suddenly you're crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a gradual process, and I really dug that.
Granted, it's a little more crunch to the game, but if you like to take it one step further with some realism, it's definitely a book to get if you can. I believe both of those can be gotten from Drive-Thru RPG. From DreamPod 9. They are no longer Ionis.
No longer Ionis. I don't know if it's Ionis or Ionis. I prefer to say Ionis just because then I'm not saying anus, but that's me. But I'm 12 and I don't want to giggle every time I say something.
Hee
hee.
Yeah, so is there any other books you want to talk about besides like the interface?
If you like paranoia, there is an official Cyberpunk 2020 paranoia crossover adventure called Alice Through the Mirror Shades. It's, if you can get it, it's grand fun. Paranoia is just one of those weird, quirky things that it works in ways that it shouldn't work. Like, I am not a goofy person. I'm not a fan of silly necessarily. But if somebody tells me they want me to play in their paranoia game, I will. I am there with bells on. And to see my favorite system like have an official crossover with it, yeah. If you like paranoia and you like Cyberpunk 2020, give it a check out. If it might be hard to find, I don't think it's available on Drive-Thru RPG, but it is available on eBay. It shows up there quite frequently, and it usually doesn't go for very much because it's just because of the nature of it.
All right. Any other comments around various books?
Well,
or do you think we're going to call it a night?
Yeah, without getting into another big long rant and another long description of a book, I think I can just leave it there. I can talk about other books for hours. I will ask. You said that you would have made Black Hands one of your go-to books.
Yep.
I'm curious about that.
Well, just because it opened up all the weapons and gave me my Volt pistol as well as weapons from other sources, right? So it included stuff from Solo of Fortune, all the chromes.
You put all the weapons in one easy-to-reach place. It just
it makes that supplement
gun
a go-to, a necessary must-have.
It's very useful to have. It just it struck me weird that was that would have been one of your three.
Again,
no, I get it.
A little bit of that career porn.
Easy access.
Yeah, so my original three were the Night City source book, Black Hands, and Wildside.
You told me in the email that Night City was off limits.
I did?
You did.
When did I say that?
You said, besides Night City, what are your three favorite source books?
I must have been drunk at the time.
I think so, but that's okay. Yeah, like I said, it's and they're too easy. And I think it's because I've been, the internet has made Black Hands really not necessary anymore.
True.
I mean, you could say that about all the books, really, but like the gear, like Black Hands being just a repository of the weapon stats, and really not even pairing the images of the stats to the weapon. I thought that was a major failing on Black Hands guide. I would have liked to have seen each of the weapons given an illustration instead of just page after page of name and stats, and then at the center of the book there's like 4 pages of pictures that don't even cover like half the weapons. Right. No, that was my complaint. It's a minor complaint. It doesn't matter. It just, that's my thing.
Got it. All right, I think
I am
about ready to put a bow on this. Another episode down.
All right, people, as always, suggestions for anything you want to talk to us about, you're welcome to throw them out here on Discord. Will has set up a channel. I'll let you tell him about that.
I'm still working on that, figuring out what's going on up there. But basically, you can definitely find me lurking about in various Discord servers, whether it's Cyberpunk Uncensored or Altasaurian, or the various other community sites that are out there. I'm also on the Reddit for Cyberpunk 2020, as well as Cyberpunk Red. Do a couple postings there. No longer on Facebook, I'm afraid, so don't bother trying to reach me there.
I'm on Facebook. You can find me on the Cyberpunk 2020 Facebook group. You can find me on the Datafortress2020 group and the Cyberpunk Uncensored Facebook group. You can also just message me directly, Derek Bernier. Fat guy, long hair, easy to find.
Yep. And go check out his site on datafortress2020.com. But
don't forget to check out Will's site at cybersmily.net. I got that right, didn't I?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, no, good episode. We look forward to hearing from you guys, and we look forward to letting you listen to our conversation again in 2 weeks.
Yep, and if you ever come back, post questions. We are more than willing to address any questions that are in chat here. If you're watching this while viewing it on YouTube, by all means, post comments. I try to go back and take a look at any comments that might be posted for our videos and try to answer them. Also, like and subscribe to Cyberpunk Uncensored while on YouTube to help him out, and also helps us out to determine, that you guys really like what we're doing here.
Like fans.
So, all right, man. I guess we'll call that an episode.
That sounds good. I will see you soon, and I'll see the rest of you guys in 2 weeks.
Yep. Take care, everyone. Bye.